live stream and just text me when we're live. Okay, Mr. Mayor, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will call the meeting to order. The first item on our list is our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge with respect to history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi nations who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. Further give thanks to the Chippewa Saugeen, the Chippewa Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land, live in peace and friendship with all its diverse people. Moving on for agenda, we're down to approval of the agenda. Is there any add-ons or agenda here tonight? Councillor Colburn, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to ask if we could add on a quick update from our Director of Operations regarding the status of the Campbell Community Center renovations, in particular if a committee is being formed to help gather and document community feedback and suggestions.
The Madam Clerk will put that under new business. Okay. Is there any other, Madam Clerk, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to request that a update regarding COVID-19 regulations be added to new business as well.
Okay. Is there any other add-ons or agenda? Okay, the recommendation is that a verbal update regarding pandemic regulations be added to new business, and the verbal update regarding Campbell Community Center be added to the new business, and that the agenda be approved as amended. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Councillor Pringle. And Madam Clerk, do you want to take the vote on these motions in case I can't see everybody, or I just try to go with what I can see?
You can see everyone right now, so until that point, you can take by show of hands.
Okay, show of hands, please. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? The motion is carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest, you can declare anytime you see fit during the meeting. We are down to public hearings. That the regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be recessed to host a public hearing for zoning bylaw amendment application Z0322 HSC Aggregate Limited Walker Company for property located at 17999 Grey Bruce Line. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Pringle, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor of the motion before us? Opposed? The motion is carried. Welcome, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Sorry for being late. I had a bit of technical difficulties getting on, but glad to be here.
It seems to be the going occurrence tonight. This meeting has been called to consider zoning bylaw amendment application Z0322 for property located at 017999 Grey Bruce Line. Madam Clerk, please advise the method by which notice of this public meeting was given.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Notice of this public meeting was given by ordinary mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject property by email to all the prescribed bodies on February 4th, 2022, posted at the subject property and posted on the Township of Georgia Bluffs website. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Georgian Bluffs before the proposed zoning bylaw is adopted or passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Township of Georgian Bluffs to the local planning appeal tribunal. The person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the tribunal unless, in the opinion of said tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Planner, please proceed with your review of the application. Jen, Jen, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, everyone. So zoning bylaw amendment application Z0322 seeks to amend the RU35 zone to allow a portable trailer to be located on site and used for office space and an employee lunchroom. The RU35 zone was established through a site-specific amendment that incorporated a site development plan as a schedule to the original bylaw, amending bylaw 55/2007. The effect of this application will be to amend that schedule to include the portable trailer. No change to the EP, Environmental Protection Zone, is proposed, and no other relief to our current zoning bylaw, 2020-020, has been requested. So in assessing the merits of this application, staff reviewed the provincial policy statement, the County of Grey official plan, and the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw. Schedule A of the county official plan does designate the subject property agriculture, hazard, and wetland, and we know that development is not permitted within a hazard or wetland area. The county official plan was amended, so in 2006, I believe, they passed amendment number 69, and it was granted to include a ready mix plant as a permitted use on the property, subject to a zoning bylaw amendment and site plan control being in effect. The township approved bylaw 55/2007 to add a ready mix plant as a permitted use. The application as presented appears to meet the intent of that official plan amendment number 69 and the County of Grey official plan 2019. Appendix A of the county official plan identifies that the subject land falls within a potential karst area, and the county does not require a karst assessment as the trailer is stationary above ground without a dug foundation. If a septic system or a foundation is proposed, the county is recommending that test holes be dug to ensure that sufficient overburden exists for the overall safety of the structure and groundwater resources. The application does not indicate that the trailer will be serviced, and a review by the building department confirms there will be no permit required as there are no water or sewage connections to the trailer. Appendix E of the county official plan identifies a potentially significant layer of bedrock on the subject lands, and that usually requires a bedrock assessment. As the property is already developed and it's largely within a provincially significant wetland, future of that bedrock resource is not likely, and so the County of Grey did not require a bedrock resource assessment for this application. So section 2.1 of the provincial policy statement directs that natural features and areas shall be protected for the long term. The county official plan identifies the subject lands contain significant woodlands and other identified wetlands. The Conservation Authority reviewed the proposed amendment in their review of impacts to natural heritage features on behalf of the township and noted that the natural heritage features on or adjacent to this property include the Allenford Station provincially significant wetland, a significant woodland, and potential for significant wildlife habitat. They note that no development is proposed within that provincially significant wetland feature or the significant woodland feature. Through their comments, they note that an environmental impact study was completed in 2006, and it provided a recommendation that 50-meter setbacks be maintained for proposed future development to minimize potential impacts on the natural heritage features present on the subject property. The proposed trailer is located just beyond that required 50-meter or recommended 50-meter setback. Therefore, they're not anticipating any negative impacts to the feature at this time with the introduction of that trailer. The Conservation Authority is of the opinion that the proposal is consistent with section 2.1 PPS policies. Conservation Authority also identified natural hazards associated with the flood and erosion potential of the provincially significant Allenford Station wetland. They note that the hazard area associated with the wetland is actually included in the EP zone. And as the placement of the trailer is not proposed within the hazard area on that site, they conclude that this application is consistent with Section 3.1 PPS policies. The county official plan transportation policies defer to the MTO. This property abuts not only Highway 21, a provincial highway, but also the Grey Bruce line. So the application was circulated to the MTO, and they have no concern with the application. We received supportive comments from them. It was also circulated to the County of Bruce, and we didn't receive any comments back from them in terms of access policies. The Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw does zone the subject lands RU35, so it's a rural zone with exceptions. It's as well as environmental protection and wetland. The site-specific RU35 zone permits the ready mix plant and uses that are accessory to that plant. As I mentioned, it was established through a site-specific amendment that incorporated a site development plan as a schedule to that amending bylaw, and that was intended to regulate development on the lands. This application is proposing to amend that schedule, which is Schedule B, to include the portable trailer to be used for office space and an employee lunchroom. And those are both uses that we would consider accessory to the business. So the addition of that trailer does not change the use on the site, and the proposed location of that trailer, which is adjacent to the existing building, can be recognized in an additional site-specific amendment. So what we would do is we would further amend that amending bylaw by changing that Schedule B site plan with the most current site plan. So we know that site plans are typically implemented through a site plan agreement. So in the event that any minor amendments such as this are required, they can be reviewed and approved at the staff level without having to further amend a bylaw. That wasn't done back in 2007. It was incorporated into the zoning bylaw in an effort to be more efficient. However, should the applicant anticipate additional site changes, I'm recommending that an application for site plan control be submitted so that the site layout can be secured within the site plan. The site plan agreement and further amended by staff without having to amend any bylaws, and that bylaw 55/2007 be amended to remove that Schedule B. Just makes the process more straightforward in the future. In terms of our consultation, we received comments back from the Conservation Authority. They have no objection to the amendment proposal at this time. They wish to be notified of any decision made with respect to this file or any appeals filed. The County of Grey Planning Department note that if a foundation or septic system is proposed to service the trailer, they recommend test holes be dug to ensure that sufficient overburden exists for the overall safety of the structure and the groundwater resources. Provided sufficient overburden exists at the proposed trailer location and positive comments have been received from the Conservation Authority, they have no further concerns. The Risk Management Office notes that the property is not located within a vulnerable source protection area where policies apply under the Clean Water Act, and therefore they have no comments. The Ministry of Transportation provided comments, noting that building and land use permits are required prior to development, and provided comments of a general nature that the MTO looks forward to the advancement of this development, and we anticipate receiving additional details for review and comment as the project progresses. We circulated the application to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property. That did include residents of Bruce County, as they were within the 120 meter circulation distance. And we didn't receive any comments in support of or in opposition to the application. So in conclusion, It has been demonstrated that the proposed application is consistent with the provincial policy statement, the county official plan, and the Township of Georgian Bluffs zoning bylaw, and the recommendation is to approve the application. The agent for the application is in attendance this evening, and I would also be happy to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Planner. No members of the public registered with the clerk to provide comments in support of or in opposition to the application. Applicant is present with her agent, Mr. Ron Davison. Mr. Davison, any comments? Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I shall be very brief. Good evening, first of all, and I represent the owners of the property. With me as well, right beside me, not on a separate camera, is Dave Monroe. Dave is an employee with Walkers. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Yeah, this is a very simple matter. I mean, the site plan, as Jen just said, was incorporated into the zoning bylaw back in 2007 when this was approved. That's a sort of an odd approach to put a site plan in a zoning bylaw, but it's not wrong. It's just different. Let's put it that way. Unfortunately, now to make any change to that site plan, it requires a rezoning, and so that's what we're doing here tonight. So whether or not we're adding a trailer or simply expanding the existing building by a couple of feet, the zoning bylaw doesn't allow for it without an amendment. So that's what we're doing. So it really is a minor thing. I understand Jen's approach. It's a good idea to let's remove the site plan from the zoning and just deal with if there's anything in the future, it would be done through a site plan agreement amendment. So we get that, and that makes a lot of sense. That's it for my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Ron. Does the committee have any questions regarding the proposed application? Deputy Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a question, just a comment. And I apologize to Jen for not mentioning this sooner. I have a tendency to kind of skim the agenda when it first comes out and then read more thoroughly the day of the meeting. On the map shown on page 2 of your report, it shows the subject lands as being on the north side of Highway 21. And I think that should actually show them as being the south side. So just if anyone in the public were following that, just for clarity, that triangle with the subject lands is in the wrong corner of that road. That's my only comment. Thank you. Otherwise, very good report.
Okay. Any comments from the rest of the committee? Seeing none? So I'll move on with our public meeting. I'll now call for a vote, and I have a recommendation here. It has been demonstrated that the proposed application is consistent with the Provincial Policy Statement 2020, the County Official Plan, and the Township of Georgian Bluffs Zoning Bylaw 2020. It is recommended that zoning bylaw amendment application Z0322 for HSC Aggregate Limited Walker Company be approved. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Pringle. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you, Ron. I'll now call for adjournment of this public meeting. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Coburn. Show of hands for adjournment. All in favor? So we are now adjourned. We're now back to our regular meeting. And we're down to delegations. We have none here tonight. Correspondence, we have none. We're down to staff reports. The first one is planning. I'll read the recommendation. Council hereby directs staff to issue a notification to affected residents of the cessation of garbage collection service 6 months from the insurance of the notification letter. Somebody to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Coburn. I see Madam CEO is on the screen. Are you going to take this one? Or who's going to take it? Madam Planner?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Jen will start off and I can add comments as needed. Thank you.
Okay, please go ahead, Madam Planner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report comes back to council for consideration. So at the November 3rd Committee of the Whole meeting, staff were directed to look into waste collection at Block 75. So Block 75 originally was intended to be one condominium development, the Hollows. So what ended up happening is that with the amount of time it took to develop Block 75, there are deadlines for registering condominiums, and the block was further divided. So the block was divided into 3 additional parcels, and is now comprised of Blue Bay Villas, the Hollow Phase 1, and the Hollow Phase 2. Each of those condominium corporations has a separate site plan and condominium agreements. So the request to council was that they consider providing garbage pickup, curbside garbage pickup. So staff went and collectively reviewed this request, and we looked at the site plan agreements and the development agreements that apply to the lands, and we obtained a legal opinion. We reached out to the waste management company for service information, and then we also reviewed the logistics related to providing that service. And so we offered this report to council. As you can see on page 2, we outline what existing agreements apply. So these are all registered on title, and development must adhere to those agreements. We see that there are provisions found in each of the site plan agreements that require the property owners to provide for garbage and recycling collection. We also regulate in the township garbage and recycling collection in our waste management bylaw. The bylaw does not allow for the collection of waste or recyclables on private roads or private properties. So the properties within Block 75 are private roads, and it's a private property. So it's similar to, we don't drive up someone's laneway to collect garbage in front of their house. The waste management bylaw has prescriptive language that notes that garbage collection shall be picked up from the roadside or boulevard in front of every occupied premise within the limits of the corporation. So the boulevard or roadside is part of a municipally owned and maintained road allowance. So further, the waste management bylaw directs containers to be placed at the curb or on the roadside boulevard adjacent to the premises, and specifies that properties fronting onto a road that is not winter maintained must place their garbage containers at the nearest practical point at the curb or the boulevard of the nearest street which is open for traffic. So when we look at the language in our agreements, in the waste management bylaw, it's very prescriptive, and it makes a note that garbage collection is to occur on a municipally maintained road, not a private lane or a private drive. So in terms of the logistics, we looked at it from a logistical standpoint. The township is not obligated to provide garbage services, and includes, per the bylaw, it includes a provision to withdraw or not provide services pending specified criteria, including excessive cost or safety concerns. All of Block 75, as I mentioned, is private property, and we don't provide garbage collection services to properties on private properties, private roads, or within the boundaries of private properties. So as the township does not maintain that interior road network, we cannot guarantee that their roads are maintained to a municipal standard. Further to that, we cannot contract out, we can't acquire insurance for municipal services provided by a third party and performed within the limits of a private property. Any damage that occurs during the collection of that garbage, the township would be liable. Excuse me. Another thing council should consider is that the provision of waste or recycling services to condominium developments does set a performance precedent. In Cobble Beach, there are going to be additional condominium developments proposed in the future. So while there's no legal requirement to provide collection services to those developments, there is a performance standard. So the residents would see that it's being provided to one group, one neighborhood, and why not theirs? So council would likely receive requests for the provision of garbage collection services in the future. When we reached out to Waste Management, who's our current service provider, they did note that provision of services to residents generally depends on how each municipality defines service in their waste management bylaw. In other municipalities, they do provide curbside pickup at multi-residential units if they're able to access the area safely. However, they note that those developments are typically serviced by front-load dumpster. But they can provide private services to the condominium corporation, and that would be an agreement entered into between the condo corp and that waste management company. So moving forward, the Block 75 continues to be developed, and when it's fully built out, there will be 82 units in Block 75. So right now, the residents are bringing their garbage down to McLeese Drive. So when it's built out, that's 82 containers along McLeese Drive. As the resident, one of the residents has pointed out, that's not sustainable and it's not desirable. So as the report notes, staff are recommending that the township provide a 6-month notice for the cessation of garbage collection services to give the residents and their condominium corporations time to enter into a service contract for waste collection and to be this would be in line with the site plan agreement, the intent of the site plan agreements. They clearly support that it was never the intention of the township to provide curbside collection to each townhouse unit. I'm not sure if our CAO wants to add anything else to that.
Thank you, Madam Planner. Madam CEO, please go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Burley, just a couple of comments, points that I've had to clarify for others. When the agreements were struck, if there had been a contemplation by the township that we were providing any sort of municipal service on these roads, we would have required them to be built to a municipal standard. There were concessions for these roads to be constructed in a narrower format. They're essentially wide driveways. And it was never contemplated that municipal services would be things like snow clearing and waste management would happen. I think the challenge right now is, out of the sort of goodness of our heart, we have provided some service to the first few residents who have moved in. And what staff is recommending is, now that there's a want to go even further, to do curbside pickup at every home, if you will. Now's the time really to look at what the intent of the agreements were. So it was always understood that waste management, waste diversion would be provided by the condo corporation, not the municipality. So I just wanted to provide that clarification for folks as you contemplate this report. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Does council have any questions of the planner or the CAO? Councilor Colburn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Burley, and through you to committee and staff. Yeah, this is a tough one, and the report is pretty clear. It would be very difficult for us to recommend going against our bylaw and the established agreements that are in place. At the same time, I really feel for these residents. I've seen the photos. I've been out there to take a look. It is a mess. And I think that, there was a bit of a lack of communication. What I would recommend, if I may, is that we don't do one-offs, and we don't bend the rules a little bit and offer a temporary service out of, as our CAO has said, out of the goodness of our hearts, because it sets up false expectations, and it's very, very hard to remove services from folks once they're in place. So I would recommend we don't do that going forward. And I guess that being said, I do have a question that I'm hoping someone on staff, likely our CAO, can address, that being the issue of taxes. So if these folks, I'm just wondering, is their tax rate adjusted for the fact that they don't get this particular service? Or how does that work? And are there any similar comparators within our municipality that we can look at?
Madam CEO.
So through you, Chair Burley, to the question, we do not have area-specific tax rates within the township. What is set up in these areas is no different than many other municipalities, where there are agreements struck for multi-residential areas, and within those agreements, people understand what their condo fees are going to cover. If I turn the question around, if the municipality was to consider providing services, that would come at an additional cost, not contemplated as part of the agreement, which then would be distributed amongst all other taxpayers. So, I would agree with you, Councillor Colburn, that I think it's unfortunate that we set a bit of a precedent in being good-hearted, and probably should have pulled the agreements out right from the start.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Before I go to Councillor Thompson, Madam CEO, I think I asked a question to you, or I think it was you. In this particular instance on block 75, the hollow and so on and so forth, these residents are not required to buy bag tags if they have a separate waste management system?
Through you, Chair Burley, usually that's set by the private company that is doing the waste management collection. So if they restrict the number of bags, then that's something that's worked out in that agreement.
No, I was not referring to the number of bags. I was referring to the actual bag tag that the rest of the ratepayers and Drawers Plus have to pay in order to put their garbage out of the road, for instance. That's what I was referring to.
No, through you, Chair Burley, you are correct that they would have a completely separate agreement with a separate provider, and it would not be tied into anything that the municipality is providing or requiring.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make that very clear, that's all.
Sure.
Councillor Thompson, please go ahead.
Councillor Colburn did a really nice job of saying what I'm thinking. I don't feel a lot differently. What I'm worried about is we are providing a service. To some degree, we're providing a service to our ratepayers. And sometimes I wonder if we're caught on this is the legal piece. So I'm going to be really honest and say, I didn't really know what this problem was until I started getting emails yesterday and today. So, I was reading our bylaws and I'm reading the reports and they make sense to me. I think, okay, so we're following it. But then when I start hearing from ratepayers, it's hard for me not to put myself in their position and think, okay, so what are the services that I receive for my taxes? And I always find roads, garbage, recycling, services, hard services like that in a rural community are what we provide. So I'm struggling with the decision today because I thought, okay, I read these reports and they make sense. But then when I hear the real life examples of the people living there, I think, oof, okay, I see why it feels to you like you're not really getting much bang for your buck, or you're not getting the service that you want. So I don't really have an answer other than a comment that is, I'm not really sure what we do. So I don't want to say to the people living in these homes, well, too bad, so sad. This is the legal agreement. So you do with your garbage, whatever is thrust upon you. But I also don't know I don't know what we do to find a middle ground. Like, is there somewhere in between? Is there something other than too bad, that's with the agreement, so it's not great, but it's the way it is. I don't know. I want to try and find something in between there.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Good question. Madam CEO, you want to respond?
Through you, Chair Burley. Yeah, I've got a couple of perspectives here. I would hope, I absolutely appreciate that things like roads and snow clearing and waste management are tangible services that we provide people. I would hope that people see a lot more beyond those services that the township provides. I guess coming in new, I look at beautiful trail systems. I look at, some potential for parks. We partner with some amenities in another community. So I do hope that people see much more than we're much more than just roads and waste management. So that's one perspective. I think if I think for this one, it is a bit of a tough one to say, we've got some legal agreements and we have to protect the corporation and the township. I think what's challenging right now is I would have expected that the condo corporations themselves would have been reviewing the agreements and moving toward putting services in place for the residents that are paying condo fees. So I appreciate that a lot of this is coming back on the township, but that is really the intent of the condo corporations and why you buy into a condominium corporation. And that's what your condo fees go to. So I just offer those as perspectives.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Before I go to Councillor Pringle, Councillor Thompson, I understand exactly what you're saying. I tend to agree with what you're saying, but the ratepayers down that particular area, Block 75, do pay taxes to Georgian Bluffs. They do. Part of their taxes go to plow the county road they use to get to where their subdivision is. And that is a missile road going down to where they turn into the hall, which is part of their taxes go towards paying, snow plowing, whatever on that. So part of their taxes do go towards roads. I just want to throw that out there. I know it's a hard decision. Councillor Pringle, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Burley. Yeah, there's some great comments there too. I just was curious to know though that, if we don't, come up with an idea or a plan or a solution, I guess, does this open the door then for them to go to third party, looking after waste management? I'm thinking like Bruce Services or one of those smaller guys who run around with a single truck and they contract that out. Is that their next step if we can't help them?
Madam CEO?
Through you, Chair Burley, that's exactly what the condo corporation should be looking at, is who is a provider out there that could give them the best service. Staff had just asked our provider if there was potential, but honestly, the condo corporation could go and contract they could put something out to 2 or 3 different companies if they wish.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Deputy Mayor Carlton, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to kind of add to what our CAO was saying. We shouldn't have gone down this road to start with, offering garbage service even out at the main road when that was part of their condo fee. And I guess I look at it from my perspective of it depends on where you live in the township, what services you get. I'm on a provincial highway. I do not get snow removal, but that's just part of where I live. So if I were living in a condominium, I would expect that they're looking after the garbage because that's part of what I'm paying those fees for. So I think, it may sound a little harsh, but I think we went down a road we shouldn't have to start with, trying to be helpful. So now we have to correct it for the sake of the rest of the township. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Carlton. Madam Clerk, I was wondering, I am going to request a recorded vote on this. I want to ask if there's any other comments or questions from council members. Councillor Colburn?
Just to say, Mr. Mayor, that some of the comments I received state some concerns about communication with our office, and I didn't have time to explore both sides of that story, but I do hope that when we commit to getting back to a ratepayer with some answers and information that we follow through on that commitment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I see no other no other comments or questions. Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I call your name, please indicate your vote. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
In favor.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
In favor.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
In favor.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So I'll move on to the agenda. Our next recommendation is that the committee support application as presented by Design Plan Service Incorporated for a red line revision to a plan of condominium 42 CDB M 2013-03 Blue Bay Villa, and that staff be directed to forward Township Council motion in support of the application to Grey County. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Councillor Pringle. Madam Planner, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This application is fairly straightforward. So this involves Blue Bay Villas, which is part of Block 75 at Cobble Beach. And effectively what they want to do is they want to change the style of the townhouses. So they want to make them bigger. There's a couple different styles within the Hollow 1 and 2, as well as Blue Bay Villas. So it just provides purchasers with a bit of a choice. So these townhouses will be larger. So to do that, they would eliminate Block 12, and they've provided new layouts for townhouse blocks 9, 10, and 11. And what they have to do is, because this plan hasn't been registered, they would go and get a red line revision approved by the County of Grey. So in supporting this application, Council's motion would be sent to the County of Grey for inclusion into their decision whether or not to approve the red line revision. It's really minor in nature. It doesn't change the intent of the development. It just provides an opportunity for the developer to provide a bit of a different product. We have that site plan agreement that we have with them, that the actual site plan will be amended, and the engineer has provided a comment on the servicing and stormwater that was approved for the original configuration, and it's not going to have any impact on what was originally approved. So the recommendation from staff is to support the application as presented, and I'm happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Madam Planner. Questions? Deputy Mayor Carleton, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One comment I received about this had to do with doing less units, and that would affect the amount of property tax received by the township based on less units. How accurate a comment is that? Or do we know?
I don't, who wants to take that? Madam Planner or Madam Treasurer? Sam,
I'd like
please
to
go ahead.
defer to the treasurer.
Please go ahead, Sam.
Through you to the committee, it's difficult to determine as tax levy is based on assessment. An assessment is comprised not only of land, but also buildings. So until we know an assessment, I couldn't determine any impact these changes would have.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Does that answer your question, Deputy Mayor Carleton?
Somewhat. I guess further to that would be then there may be 4 or 5 less properties, but if those properties were slightly larger, then does that increase their assessment, thereby increasing the amount of taxes received? Is that a fair supposition?
I see the treasurer shaking her head, and she'll wait for that assessment to come through to answer it really good. Okay, did I ask for the vote on this? I do not believe I did I? No. No, okay. A show of hands, all in favor of the motion before us? Opposed? The motion is carried. We're now down to operations. Welcome, Steve. The recommendation is that the committee receive report OPS 2022-010 dated March 23rd, 2022, annual water system summary report, schedule 22, and that all summary reports be available for public review to fulfill the township requirement per Ontario Regulation 17003, Safe Drinking Water Act 2002. Someone to move to put on floor, please. Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Pringle. I'll now turn the floor over to Director of Operations, Steve Romer. Please go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to committee tonight. In accordance with Ontario Regulation 17003, as amended under the Safe Drinking Water Act, requires that the annual summary reports for the municipal drinking water systems be prepared by the operating authority no later than March 31st of the following year. Ontario Clean Water, Aqua, has completed the required reports, and they are available at the township office for viewing during normal business hours, and they are also available on the township website. As included in the appended reports, the township scored 100% compliance in 2021 for all the 4 water systems. So I do open up the floor for if there's any questions.
Thank you, Steve, for your comments. Me not being a water expert, when I go through all those reports and see no negativity to it, it looks like a good report to me. I think that's the extent of my knowledge. Does council have any questions? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor of the motion before us? Opposed? The motion is carried. Okay, we'll skip the clerk's department. No, I think we should. The recommendation, I'm down to the clerk's department. The recommendation is a policy amend 2022, use of corporate resources during an election is hereby approved, and that a bylaw to formally adopt said policy be presented at the April 6, 2022 meeting of council. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carleton, second by Councillor Colburn. Madam Clerk, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So briefly, just for committee's information, per the Municipal Act, in the year of the election prior to April 30th, the municipality is required to adopt a use of corporate resources policy to be administered and observed throughout the election process, including the campaign period. So this report is being presented along with the policy to fulfill that requirement under the Act to ensure that we're meeting our legislated requirements throughout the election period. To summarize the policy, essentially it governs use of any type of corporate resource, being that is governed or owned by the township, including township staff and staff time during regular business hours. You'll note that this policy does look similar to that used in 2018. There is slightly expanded wording regarding technology, specifically in regards to the softwares that we now use coming out of the pandemic, expanding it to Teams, FileHold, eScribe, etc. So with that being said, I'm here to answer any questions should committee have them.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Does council have any questions? It's a good report, Madam Clerk. I see no questions, so a show of hands, all in favor of the motion before us? Opposed? The motion is carried. So we're now down to finance. I will read the recommendation that the Committee of the Whole approve report FIN 2022-04 titled 2022 Budget Update, and that upon the county agrees adoption of their 2022 tax rate, staff are hereby directed to present the 2022 sums required by law and the 2022 tax rate bylaw for approval. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Pringle, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. And I'm going to ask Madam Clerk to please go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to allow Madam Treasurer to do the initial review, and then the CAO and I can jump in with any comments at any point. So Sam, go for it.
Sorry, Madam Clerk. Sam, I apologize. Go ahead,
That's
Madam
okay.
Treasurer.
Through you to committee, this report is to provide an update from the February 22nd, 2022 preliminary budget meeting. Council had asked for further information on 7 items, which are outlined in this report. Staff are here to answer any questions that Council may have out of this.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. I open the floor up to questions of Council. See, Councillor Colburn, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Burley, and through you, I guess to the rest of Council. I guess I was a little surprised not to see any changes after Council had asked staff to take a look at several issues. But that aside, I did want to make mention, and I know I've spoken about the new communications specialist position before, but I'm going to say it again. The report references the strategic plan, and of course we approved the strategic plan, but all that is a guiding document, and it covers the years 2020 to 2024. So there's nothing in that document, in fact, that says we need to go out and hire an additional staff person this year. My preference would have been to have left that for the new term of council, for them to make that decision as to whether they felt that was something that was needed at this time. Having said all of that, I don't think that's enough for me to vote against adopting the proposed budget, but I did want to make that point clear. Thank you, Chair Burley.
Thank you, Councillor Colburn. Go ahead, Councillor Pringle.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Burley. There, yeah, I want to just echo what Councillor Colburn mentioned there too. After I had read the takeaways that were happening there with the budget there, to see nothing had changed at all, I kind of thought that was a bit of a surprise. But again, at 3.22%, I know we're, in the relative world of what's going on around us there, we're still doing a really good job of keeping it down. So I'm definitely going to support what has been decided by staff. Just throwing it out there again too, and I know I'd mentioned the last time there about the bit of the profits from the airport going back to the people of the township, and I still want to see something happen there. But I know we can discuss that at a later date down the road, what we can do to help out or give back, I guess is what I was looking at. But overall, no surprised there was no changes, but again, not enough change there to make me not vote for it. So obviously, like I said, 3.22 is better than a lot of them that are around us. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Pringle. Before I go to Deputy Mayor, Madam Treasurer, the only concern I got about, I forget what the number was concerning Elm Street, the funding for that source. The only problem I had with it, and maybe you can explain to me, is you indicated to take from the Oxen water reserves. And can you just explain that part, please? I don't think you're taking all the reserve part of them, or what is it you had in mind?
Yes, so through you to committee, approximately $800,000 of this total project relates specifically to the Oxenden water system, half of that portion being Georgian Bluff, so $400,000. As it is specifically water related, we are able to fund it through the Oxenden Water Reserve. The remainder of the project, we cannot fund through the Oxenden Water Reserve, which is why staff are recommending the Road Construction Reserve.
No,
Does that answer your question?
Partly. I'm just wondering about, I'm concerned with the reserves left in the Oxen water system if we take those funds out. That's what I was wondering.
Okay, so I'm still working on the 2021 year-end numbers to get finalized numbers. At the end of 2020, there was approximately $600,000, which number I am anticipating to increase due to 2021 contributions. So there is the sufficient funds within that Oxenden Reserve. There will be a staff report coming to a April committee meeting that outlines our reserve transfers for the prior year and reserve balances. Again, these will be unaudited numbers as our year end is ongoing.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. I appreciate that response. Deputy Mayor Carlton, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess a couple of things that I see in there. One of the things that we had asked about was the review of the 2.2% COLA increase. Since it's only a savings of $200, it would take staff probably cost more for staff to make that change than it's worth doing. So I would suggest at this point leaving that alone. The Elm Street reconstruction, that concerns me that we take that much out of the Oxenden Reserve, because in my mind, Elm Street was never serviced through the Oxenden system. It's all off the Wyerton water system, but that was a separate water system that fed down Elm Street. And I forget what it was called, South Wyerton or something like that. Is there a reason we're not willing to look at carrying some debt on that? Because the township doesn't carry a lot of debt. And sometimes having debt can mean we're eligible for some more grants and such. So I'm concerned with driving a reserve that I don't think that area really paid into that Oxenden Reserve ever. It would have paid into a separate area, is my understanding. So just wondering if staff can comment on that. Thank you.
I'll maybe start off with Madam Treasurer first, and then I'll go to CAO. Please, Sam, go ahead.
Yes, so through you to committee, although the option is there for a loan, those terms of the loan would have to be funded through taxation for the repayments. So that would be the repayments of the complete loan balance plus the interest rate. So staff were doing a quick analysis, and when we looked at if we were to take a full $3 million loan, the interest on the first year would be almost $60,000. So that was $360,000 that we would have to add to our municipal levy, which then would increase our tax rate by almost 6% over that of 2021. And it would result in an additional $50 that each property, using the average assessed value of a single family dwelling, would be paying for this loan over the next 10 years.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Madam CEO, any comment?
Through you, Chair Burley, thanks very much. And I think Sam has explained it very well. I think the only thing that I would add to it is there would be an impact every year for the 10-year term of the loan. That I think is the reason staff is not recommending that in this particular case.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Great comments from everybody, and I say, Madam Treasurer, you've done an excellent job looking after that situation for us. It's well done, and thank you. Does the council have any other questions on this particular motion? If not, I'll ask for a show of hands. All in favor of the motion before us? The most opposed? The motion is carried. So we're done with that. We're done with reports. Madam Clerk, was there any public registered with you for comment? No. So we're down to, we no unfinished business. We're down to new business. I guess the first one I'll ask Madam Clerk to give us an update on the pandemic, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this update will be brief, considering effective this past Monday, most of the regulations throughout the province have been lifted. So this update is simply to notify council and the public that effective April 1st, our council chambers will be reopened to members of the public. They are welcome to attend meetings in person or virtually. We are still willing to accommodate virtual participation for the foreseeable future. So effective April 1st, members of the public are welcome to attend council meetings and committee meetings in person in chambers. We, of course, will continue to live stream to our YouTube channel as well. But that's it.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Just a comment. In my position and attending meetings in various different locations throughout this area, it's just amazing the amount of different protocols that other people are putting in place, and it makes it very confusing. And what we as Georgian Bus, what you're doing is you're following the provincial policy statements, correct? And that's our guideline. Am I correct in saying that?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. So the township stance has always been to follow the provincial lead throughout the pandemic, and considering that masking requirements, capacity requirements, and all other regulations are now lifted except for those within the healthcare center, we are essentially again following the provincial lead and welcoming the public back into our chambers. Of course, if people are more comfortable in continuing to wear their masks or in continuing to space, then we of course welcome that within our chambers as well. So we are encouraging everyone to move at their own speed as we welcome the reopening, and we are communicating that messaging to our staff as well.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and it's good to hear that. And I am glad to see that. If I see a lot of people that still have masks on, so on, that's their right, and more power to them. And long as we all respect each other, everything will go along fine. So that's the update on the COVID. Oh, Councillor Coburn?
Is that okay, Chair Burley, if I just ask a quick question?
No, yes.
Thank you. So I attended a meeting today where they talked about the shifting sands of COVID and the lifting of requirements by the end of April. And one of the comments that was made was that WSIB still deems COVID to be a workplace hazard, and it looks like there's no notion of lifting that. And so the concern then is that we have appropriate measures in place to ensure that our employees and our staff have a safe workplace. I just wondered if you have taken that into consideration in some of the measures as well. Thank you.
Madam CEO or Madam Clerk, comments?
Sure. Through you, Chair Burley. I'll jump in and invite Ms. Drury to add to my comments. We have met as a senior leadership team and with our HR manager as well. We've We've also consulted with other folks in our county. And I would say that our perspective wouldn't be just COVID related. It would be that encouraging people that if they're not well, whether it's COVID related, they have the flu, they have any other ailment, to consider staying home and taking care of themselves and, not coming into the workplace. I think we're being very encouraging for folks. I know of one staff member today who was in and had been fighting a cold, and she wore her mask the entire time that she was in. So we're trying to create an environment where people feel comfortable if they want to distance, if they want to mask. We hand washing, sanitization is still happening. All of those things will continue on, in terms of considering how we move out of COVID.
Thank you, Madam CEO. You froze, but I think you were done. Yes.
I am.
Yeah. Okay, I would like to send a special thank you to staff, Brittany, for keeping Georgian Bluffs so way ahead of the game, being able to have in-person meetings and virtual meetings all at the same time. And you should be commended for that, because you've done an excellent job. And as usual, Georgian Bluffs is way ahead of everyone else. Now, speaking of going way ahead, Council Colburn, you had asked a question about the Kemble Arena, a topic that I'd love to get information on too. And I believe Mr. Dolmar is going to speak to this. Steve, please go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to committee and council. In response to the RFP, we had a lot of potential consultants have expressed their concerns with the tight timelines for the project. So staff has inquired as to whether the project timelines could be extended from the spring 2023 date submitted with the original application. Indications are that the dates can be adjusted, so staff will be amending the substantial completion date in the RFP and confirm with the province. Once a consultant is on board and the project details are a little bit more known on what's going to be happening out there, staff will be providing a full update report to council.
Thank you, Steve. So what you're saying, Steve, is that our funding that we received will be secured. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, okay. Madam CEO, please go ahead.
Yeah, so through you, Chair Burley, I've kind of come into this project partway through, and I think one of the questions was, will we be striking a committee, or will there be an opportunity for community engagement? And there will be, for sure. It's interesting that I had an architect contact me a couple of weeks ago who's very interested in bidding on the project, but their comment was they don't see doing proper community engagement, getting up to speed on the project, doing a proper design, and meeting the timelines. And to be fair to staff, we submitted the funding application in 2019 with 2023 as spring of 2023 as a projected completion date. And then, as we know, the world got turned on its ear for a little more than 2 years. So staff has reached out to our funding authorities, and they have indicated that we can adjust that end date timeline and then amend the RFP and hopefully get up and running later on this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam CEO, and that's great to hear that. And that's so important because, believe it or not, this is a very, very contentious topic in Georgian Bluffs. Council Colburn, you took your hand down. Are you okay now?
Just quickly, if I might, Chair Burley. So when we talk about extending the deadline, do we have a date in mind then for substantial completion?
Steve or Madam CEO?
Through you, Councillor Coburn, or Chair Burley to Councillor Coburn, I think those details we're still working out at this point, but we can provide an email update to council once the new dates for the application and the RFP are known.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Do we have any other new business here tonight? Seeing none, I'll move on to the agenda. Then notice of motion. Does council have any notice of motions here tonight? Seeing none, we have no closed session tonight. Our next meeting is April the 6th at 5 o'clock. If we've no other business here tonight, I'll ask for a motion of adjournment. Moved by Councillor Pringle, second by Councillor Thompson. There's no discussion. A show of hands, all in favor of adjournment. The motion is carried. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, folks. Take care.